Hey everyone, I'm Christine Gritmon here with Social, the live stream I do every single Friday at 12 noon Eastern Time. Though recently I've really had to add caveats to that timing. I've recently had a few British guests. Last week I had Teresa Heath Waring, and we were in, of course, Greenwich Mean Time. And now I'm here with Ashley Graham, who is you're in San Diego, right?
Yeah, San Diego.
Yeah, so the specific time, of course. And this is Ashley Graham from Brandesso. Hey Ashley, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. So first, tell us a little bit about yourself, about what you do. Tell us about Brandesso, and then we'll get to events.
Yeah. So I often call myself the brandista.
Mm-hmm.
And so I specialize in, brand marketing and communications through social media and public relations. And so basically how I apply branding to that is really extracting, the key messaging and what makes a brand unique, and make sure that that's translated across the content that we put out there, as far as like the assets, the creative, the copy, and anytime that we're doing, PR related outreach, that, the publications that we're outreaching to ultimately make an emphasis on that key messaging as well.
And I love your whole coffee metaphor, because it's really apt. I mean, to your point about distilling the essence,
yes,
and energizing it.
Exactly. Well, and so I'm
got my iced coffee here right now.
I was like, yep, I got my coffee over here. It's a little too hot, so I can't drink it. But It's like, I often also say that I just naturally have a caffeinated personality. So I feel that even my brand and my business, ultimately, as it grows, it needs to portray me. And then as it grows, it'll ultimately portray, the people that I bring on board. And I am just, a bubbly, very outgoing person. So,
and I'm sure that really comes in handy at events, because events are, of course, social. First, we have some shout outs. We have Tim, who is in Boise, Idaho. He made it. And George is right near me. So George, I haven't met George yet either, and we're going to meet at Social Media Marketing World. So Social Media Marketing World is, responsible for the timing of why I wanted to talk about events this week, because it is, of course, next week, in case everyone out there isn't sick of hearing about it already. But I go to a lot of other events. I just came back from a couple events in the UK. I know you go to other events too, and you are heavily involved in Social Media Marketing World this year. You're one of the leaders of the volunteers.
Yeah.
So I figured we could talk a little bit about events and, why they're awesome, how to choose the events for you, because not every event is for everyone. There are so many events. The more events you go to, the more events you hear about, and you're like, I can't afford to do just events. And also how to make the most out of them, because it's easy not to. And I've told my stories about how different each year of Social Media Marketing World has been for me, and I will again. But first, I want to hear your background. So what are some of the how long have you been in business, and what are some of the first events you went to when you started?
So the first year that I went to Social Media Marketing World was actually the same month that I filed my business back in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
So, my first year attending, I'm a social butterfly. So it's like I was working in-house, but when you're making that transition and you're also trying to shift your mindset to be like, okay, I want to be in business. And so ultimately going to Social Media Marketing World that year, I just wanted to soak up as much information as I could, learn from, players of the game that have been out there for so long, learn from the staff of Social Media Examiner. But I just was a little not as outgoing. I was a little bit more timid and shy. It was just a new experience. So, even being a volunteer, having the support of the staff, and this is something that I've mentioned, in videos prior, is the staff and all of the other volunteers. Everybody's main goal is to support you and just offer a helping hand in whatever way they can, it's very, empowering.
And that's really huge, because a lot of people feel like, for people like you and people like me who are social butterflies, it feels like, oh, of course you know what to do at a conference, but not really. When I first walked into my first, I also started my business in 2016 and went to my first events, but I didn't get to World until 2017. And I walked in and I was kind of seized by social panic. I was sitting in the corner texting my husband, being like, and he's like, do your thing. I'm like, I can't find my thing. And I happened to walk up, of all people, to Pete from Andrew and Pete. He had his snap code, because this was 2017, Snapchat was still a thing. He had his snap code on his wheelchair wheel. And I went up to compliment that, and then I realized that I recognized them from their headshots, their speaker bios. It was their first year speaking at the event. They had amazing headshots by Laura Pearman, who's one of my favorite photographers, and they looked like they'd been blown up. And so it really stood out. And so I chatted with them, and thank God they turned out to be the sweetest people who didn't care that I was nobody. And that is really key about a lot of the conferences I've been to. People being willing to talk to you and realizing we're kind of all in this together, and that sense of kind of group, I don't know, family.
Yeah, it is a family.
Mm-hmm. So what other events do you go to generally? Does it kind of change from year to year as things shift?
Yeah, so I would say that the largest conference that I have been to or been associated with has been Social Media Marketing World.
Yeah, it's huge. How big is it this year? Do you happen to know the numbers that they're expecting?
I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I know that, ultimately the goal that they're striving for, they keep getting closer and closer every year. So It is exciting to see, the more that I am, a part of the team. So, but as far as like other large conferences,
or even small events. Or even small events, just events that you find are your thing.
Yeah, so I probably attend a lot of micro events, and that's usually, influencer events here in San Diego, whether it's like lifestyle bloggers. With another volunteer, Rob, we run the social media bloggers group, like the meetup here in San Diego, which has over 13,000 members in the group. We we're not as active on it as we used to be, but that is something that we kind of do, which we're more on, the operation side of it is like picking the venues, things like that. But those are always a good time just because I get to connect with all my bloggers.
Yeah.
A lot of other micro events. It's just any type of like networking events that, that you get a bunch of industry people together to either like have a drink and just kind of like unwind at the end of the day. It's really sporadic, my calendar.
Do you travel for any events?
I did. I got to travel for my first event that was last September. And, the good friend that I'm commandeering her apartment today for this live, we went to Chicago for a conference that was hosted through a business advisory group. So that was actually a really great experience.
Cool. So there's so many events out there. What helps you decide if an event is worth your time, your effort, your money, if it costs admission?
I am still trying to figure out my whole process with that. Yeah. The more that I'm getting busy, my time and my attention needs to be a little bit more segregated.
Yeah.
I worked with an advisor last year, and he kind of like painted a picture of what networking and what those types of events should look like. And I mean, he was saying I should go to at least like 3 or 4 events a week. Now,
wow.
Yeah, I was like, that's a pretty big number. So I try to ultimately take that number and then maybe like divide it by half to maybe go to an event here or there, whether it's an event that my friends I know are hosting just to show my support, but to more industry related events where I can maybe prospect or just network to potentially see what opportunities are out there. But I haven't found my sweet spot yet. It's just kind of like I juggle a few things up in the air and I'm like, okay, well, which one am I going to go to this week?
Do you track the financial ramifications of any of these events? I'll straight out say that I don't, but people have told me, they're like, you really need to keep track of, here are the connections you made at that event, and make sure you can track that journey of I made money as a result of that conversation or that connection. As related to how much it costs or anything like that. Do you track anything like that, either formally or informally?
No, but one thing that I had to kind of like discipline myself on is like, if I do get a business card or if I make a contact, like immediately scheduling like a thank you email to go out the next day. And that's just because have gone, well, I mean, I do this like every season, but I just kind of like purge anything that's like in my house that just does not serve like where I'm going whatsoever.
Doesn't spark joy.
Yeah, and so what I come across is like just mounds and mounds of business cards, and for a while I had accumulated like 150 to 200 within like a few months or whatever, and I mean they're just sitting there. So anytime, like, I no longer allow them to sit there anymore. So I'll basically just get them, I'll put them into my MailChimp, and then I'll send a personalized email that says, hey, thank you so much for chatting with me. Hope we can connect again. And then I basically just disperse of the business card, and that's that.
I literally hired somebody once to enter those people into my CRM. And then I was going to have her then send a message to each of them. And it didn't happen. I still have to figure out my flow at events for how I make that happen. And I know several people in our mutual communities are actually moving towards putting codes on their phone that enable that people can just scan, and then they enter the person's chat bot or whatever. I don't have a chat bot. I don't do that. But I'm actually putting together. Yeah, but I'm putting together kind of a virtual version of that where I'm putting on one landing page links to my Facebook, my LinkedIn, and all that stuff. I do have Linktree, which links to various things, but this will be different. This will be specific and branded on my website, and I'll just make a QR code for it. QR codes were dead until iPhones could start reading them, and now I figure someone can just go boop. So I like business cards too. Do you do business cards still?
I do business cards. I'm very, very traditional.
Yeah, I mean, people notice my business cards. They're square and they have a big picture on them. So,
I don't know. I just feel that there is a psychology like background to like a business card that is just like, depending on like the weight and the feel and the look of it, it's like you can associate more of like the branding aspect. And most people, like with their business cards, it portrays their brand, and people sometimes have like their face on it. I know commonly I see, anytime that there's an exchange of a business card, somebody will take a picture of them holding the business card so they're able to associate the card with the face. I'm seeing that a lot more now, but I don't know. I think that there is, again, a psychological meaning to having a business card and the look and the feel of it.
And that brings up a really good point, which is branding. So one of the nice things about an event is that it can actually be a great branding opportunity. It was funny, last June, I was on the Road to Social little mini trip between various conferences with a handful of people. And I kind of felt almost like we were all in costume as ourselves, like Chris Thrubb had his yellow I Am Here hat and his little Salvation Army shoes. And like Brian Fanzo had all his Think Like a Fan bracelets on. Damian Ross had his hat that he has on all of his videos. Amanda Robinson always had the pink lipstick and the perfect blowout. And, and I've always had red just because I do. And that's a huge part of my brand. And I sort of felt like, Avengers Assemble, like we're all in our little superhero costumes. And World is going to be like that. It's going to be funny. Everyone's going to be in like their brand colors and stuff. It's going to be almost cheesy, but are you always going to have, coffee in one hand and mimosa glass in the other? Or how do you communicate your brand at a conference in an effective way that's not ridiculous?
Yeah, it's like usually I did a few workshops lately, and I'm making it more of like a conscious decision of actually having a coffee cup or a mug in my hand while I'm there, and it's something that I just like hold consistently. Now, partially that's unintentional, but again, I'm trying to make it more of like an intentional thing because I don't really have like any branded swag just yet to wear. It's something that I have.
I don't have branded swag yet either.
Yeah. So I'm like, it'll get there.
You know what you should do? Cardboard coffee sleeves that go onto like a disposable coffee cup, because that would be cheap to print and everybody will need it. That would be good.
Yeah, I need to find a designer for that.
So events, making the most out of events, making sure you're not sitting in a corner and just hiding from someone. What are some of your tips for making sure not only that you're not sitting in a corner at an event, but also making sure that you can get the most after it?
Yeah. So I actually made like a few little bullet points, but the biggest thing for me, like when I'm trying to decide if I want to go to an event is thinking about my why.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, what is the why? Am I going there just to network with people and maybe, make new friends? Or am I going there with the intention of like potentially finding new business? Obviously, that's more of my why given my, the role that I'm in. But, it's just like understanding your why and ultimately why you want to go to that event, whether it's to learn a piece of information, meet somebody specific, or meet potential prospects.
And if you go to meet somebody specific, how do you get to do that really? Because sometimes it can feel like, those people who you want to meet and you're like going to a conference and they're on the speaker bill or they'll be there or whatever. How do you get that in? How do you make sure that you'll get to meet them?
Well, I know that they're like using social media marketing world as an example. I know that there are volunteers specifically for those roles. Mm-hmm. So when you get to the conference and say, for instance, you want an introduction, you can go to the volunteers that are in that role and they can make the introduction for you.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's pretty hands-on what they've got going on.
One of the things I love about that conference is that the speakers are roaming the halls. The speakers stay. The speakers are at the parties. The speakers are around, as opposed to some events where, they're hidden away in the VIP room until they're on the stage. And then as soon as they're off the stage, their people sweep them off. And it's really good when it's not like that and they're actually at the event.
Mm-hmm. And then say, for instance, maybe you see them walking down the hallway or you just randomly come across them. I think having some type of like potential icebreaker to maybe start that conversation with them. Now, I can't think of a creative one off the bat, but I usually am just like, oh, hi. I'm not super like smooth about it. I'm usually like, I usually like throw out fangirls and I'm like, I don't mean to fangirl, but I just wanted to say hi.
I did that to Brian Fanzo when I met him at World 2017. I met him on the ramp, on the gangway or whatever of the USS Midland on the way to that party. I was like, Brian Fanzo, you're one of the only people I follow on Snapchat. Hugs and selfies. And we got hugs and we got selfies. And we stayed in touch because I was just too high on party mode to be intimidated. Reaching out in advance is also a really good technique. Pre-networking. Have you been doing pre-networking for social media marketing world this year?
I have, but I guess everyone's on the Hoova app. I think I'm saying that right. But I'm like, that app has been fantastic as a way to get to know other attendees. And I know that other volunteers have taken advantage of the app as well. Mm-hmm. But it's like just seeing the conversation, just left and right of everybody, just like coming together and wanting to do planning and events like that are separate from the conference. It's just exciting to see all the communication that's been going on through that app and seeing, I don't know, maybe this is just me, but I think it's really entertaining following along on the leadership board. I'm like, oh, who's taking first today?
Yeah, and also even just following the hashtag on various social media platforms, because hashtags are such a huge part of conferences in particular. Even though hashtags aren't in common use on Facebook, people do use a hashtag for something like this. And Twitter, it's just nuts. I met so many people at Social Media Marketing World 18 because I had followed the hashtag in advance and just gotten in on some of those conversations. And it's miraculous what a huge difference that can make.
Yeah, it does. It was like I'm all about, using that hashtag. I'll make sure I'll put it in my profile once I know that like the marketing and they're starting to do more promotions. And it's just a great way to follow along. I'm not so much like active on Twitter. I'm getting better at it, but I know with that hashtag specifically, it does give me the opportunity to go through and like follow along with people who are attending the conference and then liking their posts. So,
and you can add them to lists too, which is nice. You can be like, these people are going. Let's have on TweetDeck or whatever you use a feed of just those people. So if you really want to specifically engage within that community and see what other people are saying for various sessions or anything, makes it a little easier. To be able
absolutely.
To. Great. And then after the conference, how do you make sure? I mean, I know you mentioned the business cards and trying to like get those out as soon as possible. Thank them for their service and then that shit. But how do you do you have any tips for making sure that the conference doesn't end and that's only the beginning?
I guess like connecting with them on social media if you weren't already connected with them on social media.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always try to find like a balance of like Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn. I feel that those are like the easiest platforms to connect with people that you meet in a more professional setting. I feel that Facebook there's a little bit more of connect. So I try to find, a healthy version of like making that connection with them on Facebook, just because I feel Facebook is more of like personal, friends, family, things like that.
Yeah.
But usually if I meet somebody, I'm like, what's your Instagram handle? Like, let's get LinkedIn on LinkedIn. So I usually, I don't know, if I come across them, I'll just send the request. And if they accept it, it's like winning.
Yeah, that's a good call. I also feel like I take a million selfies. It's just part of who I am, and it's part of my brand, and blah blah blah. But tagging I take the selfie, I post it, and I tag them in it. So like I kind of know who the person is, and they know who I am because there we are. All right, so I'm gonna move to the silly part of my show. I have a new thing called 5 questions. Back in the day, the original Daily Show, before Trevor Noah, before Jon Stewart, Craig Kilborn did 5 questions. And so this is my homage to that, and it's mostly silly. Okay, so don't overthink it. Just blurt out the first one that comes to your head. Okay. You ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. Honey graham or cinnamon graham?
Oh, cinnamon.
S'mores or sundaes?
S'mores.
Personal brand or brand named brand?
I'm going to go with personal.
All right.
Yeah.
Drip coffee or French press coffee?
French press.
And podcasts or live streams?
Live streams now.
All right. Cool. Yeah. All right. So tell these good people where they can see your, actually, you know what? First, let me see if anyone has any questions. I don't think they really do, but now's a good time to ask them. And in the meantime, while people are thinking up their questions and typing them along, tell people where they can find you and what you put out there in terms of content from your brand so that they can keep up with you.
Yeah. So with Brandesso, which most of the handles you can find on social media are at Brandesso, but on Twitter it's at Brandesso SD. But a lot of the content that I put out on Brandesso is highlighting, industry related topics, any like features or cool things that happen with clients. That's more of like the business side. But as far as my personal brand, that is still kind of in planning mode. I'll promote just like any cool events that I'm going to, any shout outs to other entrepreneurs. I have a video series that I started called Coffee Babble on YouTube. It's very well presented videos that highlight other entrepreneurs or other creatives in San Diego to get their message and their branding out there. So it's been pretty fun. You can follow along with that to kind of, dive in to see what we focus on there. But
are you Brandesso on YouTube or is it Coffee Babble on YouTube?
So I am not to my recommended subscriber count just yet, so I can't change the name.
Oh, I know you can't change the URL, but what's the name of the channel?
Oh, just under Ashley Graham. It's probably better to type in Coffee Babble with Ashley Graham, and then all the videos will come up.
Ah, that's smart. Yeah, because Ashley Graham is, of course, also the name of a model.
So. Yes, which I'm very honored to have her name.
Well, you're both lovely. All right, so let's see. I think that, Tim has a very good point. If you want to, one good conversational end could be, I really like the article you wrote, or, I listened to your podcast or something like that. I know this year, even though I've met Amy Porterfield at both of the previous years, she doesn't really know who I am. So certainly I'm going to say, hey, I'm in your B School group. So any sort of in that you have, if you follow them. Yes, It's the Midway, not the Midland, but it's irrelevant because they're not having the party there this year.
Oh, I'm so bummed about that.
I know, but we'll be networking. It'll be lovely. Oh, and Carlin has a good point, which is that a great time to meet people at these things is after they've spoken. And you can say, one thing I did last year, which was really cool, is after someone had spoken, I got them on video answering a question. that I had about their presentation that they hadn't answered in the presentation. So that was a great thing. And a lot of them remembered that, which was great. Engaging through their content on their platforms would be great. Oh, yeah. So Tim wants to know, what is the biggest conference networking mistake that people make? Not doing it, I think.
Yeah. It's like the biggest hurdle is just showing up, right? And so it's like, if you can at least just show up, I mean, who knows what opportunities or what type of people you're going to meet. It's like in our type of industry, I think it's all about who you know. So
absolutely.
Like you're not going to make anything happen if you don't go out and meet people.
That is true. That is true. So really, it's the opposite of war games, where it says the only way to win is not to play. It's the opposite. The only way to win is to be in it to win it. And George just wants some flight information, which I'm not publicizing here, but I will get back to you, George. All right. So thank you so much to Ashley Graham of Brandesso. And I'm going to write that on the screen so that people know that you are Brandesso. Yay! I wish I had a little coffee emoji. You're also personally loving mimosas. Do you do anything? I know the coffee thing. Do you do anything with mimosas now?
So I'll give kind of like the quick little backstory to that handle. So I used to have a lifestyle blog. And it was called Love and Mimosas. So it was supposed to be kind of like an online platform of just any type of articles around, particular things, but then it took on a whole other life of its own. But when I went out and started Brandesso, it was like that. I fell into my passion. That was like the driver. I was just like all for that. So yeah, blog kind of fell on the waistline, and I've been trying to come up with a new handle to use for personal branding as well as, the business branding with Brandesso. Mm-hmm. That's more of like coffee related, but I cannot think of a good handle that's not.
Well, maybe just Brandista, but maybe it's taken.
Yeah, it's like there is someone out there.
Aw, man, beat her up. All right, so thank you so much for joining us today, Ashley. I look forward to meeting you in real life and getting hugs and selfies and drinking coffee and maybe even drinking mimosas in San Diego.
Oh yeah.
And everyone should follow us and all the crazy amounts of content that are going to be coming out of social media marketing world. And yeah, I'm Christine Gritmon. I do this every single Friday at 12 noon Eastern time, except next week is going to be weird. Next week, we're still going to be in the middle of the opening keynote on Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So next week, I think it's going to be more bits and pieces here and there. Really just stay tuned to Christine Gritmon Inc. Facebook page to see when I'll be doing what in terms of video next week. And of course, I'm going to be live tweeting like a crazy person and Instagramming wherever I can. So everyone just follow me. I'm creating more than enough content next week. So if I don't wind up doing my live show, we'll survive. But I will at some point. All right. Bye, everyone. And thanks, Ashley.
Bye.